The hospitality sector endures a number of challenges. In one of our earlier episodes, we discussed the regulatory and security challenges which this industry has to encounter. In this episode, we further the discussion on how the end users of the hospitality sector, the leisure and business travelers, are impacted by the sweeping changes which the hospitality sector has undertaken. The Federation of Hotels and Restaurants Association of India estimates that there are just 103,000 branded hotel rooms in India, of which just 35% are budget. The varying hospitality options also widen potential risk indices for the consumer, from the niche spenders to the everyday needs of the average hotel user. These can range from the use of big data as a threat to user privacy to challenges to established brands from aggregator services. Join our experts in understanding the changing face of the hospitality sector, its implication for the job security of its employees, and implications for you as the end user.
Hello and welcome to another episode of India Risk Report. And in this episode, we are looking at the hospitality sector and the risks and challenges that it faces while it continues to look up ahead at the prospect of huge growth, as India is today ranked the world's 10th largest business travel market, but is expected to grow by leaps and bounds to clock the fastest growth in this segment over the next 5 years, where the Indian market could eventually touch a figure of $30 billion by 2030 if all goes right, and it puts India well ahead in the category of the top 5 spots as business travel destinations. And to look at those key issues, we have two eminently qualified experts once again with us on the show. We have with us Mr. Gary Singh, President of Iris Consulting. Gary, thank you once again for being with us on the show. And for the first time, we have with us Mr. Anshuman Malik, who is the CEO of Blue Plate Hospitality and Services, with over 2 decades of experience in the field. And Anshuman, I'm going to go straight to you with a question that worries me. I think one area which is going to probably pose a challenge to our growth is the regulatory hurdles that our growth could come across, because at one step we say that the Indian business-friendly rankings have jumped up dramatically, but on the other hand, we still seem to not be able to provide that one or a few window clearances that some economies like China provides. So where is the problem?
Absolutely. If you look at the growth in the hospitality sector, and especially into hotels, the budget hotels have taken a big leap in terms of their growth across India. The growth would have been much higher if there would have been a single window clearances. People get into the loop of getting clearances, all across, from the time they decide of making a hotel to the time it takes for the hotel to be operational. So all that takes so much of time that a lot of times, the owner just gives up. And then the marketing of those spaces which have been built. India still needs a lot of, avenues to market these hotels in the Western world and all across India. So that's where I think the bigger challenges are at the moment.
Well, there's a point, Gary, that Anshuman talked about, and I think you may like to throw a little more light on that. I think, I think there is a related problem, and that's really up your street in expertise, that India ranks 23rd worldwide in online safety and 89th worldwide in internet speeds, etc., regarding the cyber attacks that come across to various industries. Now, while we can keep blaming the government to say that the regulatory process is slow, but there is another problem area, and that is the threat to those who want to do business. Do you feel there is a need for greater contribution by the people in the hotel industry to enhance the walls around them so that their safety, particularly from cyber attacks, is ensured?
I think this is precisely need of the hour, because if you look at it, hospitality industry is one which will meet every investor, every businessman, every traveler first, even before the investors and those business people have met the other parties with whom they want to do business. So if the hotel industry is great set up to welcome them, give them comfort, you have started winning the war. and then obviously the rest of the business will follow. So economy and hospitality, I will say, will always remain side by side in terms of growth. So what hospitality industry has to do now, they need to start equating themselves on global benchmarks, whether it's regulatory in India or not. They need to cross the minimum threshold that a regulation is required. On IT, India, being the IT capital of the world, is not enough regulatory mechanism enacted for within India's situation. So in this case, what they need to do is they need to pick up what's best globally, and they need to immediately start following within their federations, within their association, that this is the benchmark which is there for us, not really a regulatory mechanism. The crucial thing which emerges here is the traveler might be in Hong Kong today and in Singapore tomorrow. India for a day jumps to Europe. The traveler is expecting same amount of data privacy, same amount of security for the credit card that is being used to pay. If you end up messing at this stage, you're not giving that comfort which this investor and business traveler need. So we need to be having a global benchmark. No need to worry about whether the regulatory mechanism is catching up or not. Go get the best, follow the best.
Okay, well brought out. But Anshuman, I want to go back to something that you talked about, is the need for budget hotels and budget activities. Now, my figures are that India has just 103,000 branded hotel rooms in India, compared to the city of Bangkok, and that's not all of Thailand, just Bangkok, which has 125,000 similarly branded rooms. And India needs another 180,000 more rooms by 2020 to meet the essential business traveler requirement. So the issue is not just about quality and branded rooms, but I would like to go on to a point that Gary talked about, that how do you make those many more people feel safe and secure that their own individual concerns and their business interests would be protected in India, and that would not just begin by checking cars on the entry gates of hotels.
I would like to throw some light on 2010 Commonwealth Games. At that point in time, there was some research done, and there were more than 14,000 rooms which were found, which were there in Karol Bagh and other areas.
In Delhi.
In Delhi itself. There was a huge demand even at that point of time because of the games. And this demand is also likely to get in multiple numbers in the times to come. So if we look at the way these B&Bs used to operate at that point in time, and now even how they operate now, the risk factor of security of the guests who are walking in those is still a big question mark. I mean, today we walk into any hotel, we give our Aadhaar card, we give our PAN cards, thinking that our security is absolutely, we are absolutely secured. This data will not be shared with anyone. But at the end of the day, I don't know whether this Aadhaar card number has gone to somebody which can use it in some other form.
Yeah, so actually, you brought out a very important point. I want to go back to Gary because he was just talking about, the protection of data. Now, information that we get is that customer data is often carelessly stored by hotels because they just need to keep details of customers and clients to just make subsequent billing to them if required on miscellaneous issues. There is also the fact that hotels themselves are not very, very particular about data protection of individuals, as Anshuman has just brought out, because individuals themselves happily pass on information. The hotels also say that we are doing routine activity. But the bottom line is that in the second half of 2016, the number of lost, stolen or compromised records increased by 167 million, with 61% of data breach incidents being identified as thefts. The second point is that people publicly give away a lot of information through very careless use of Wi-Fi and related activities. And the third is that India leads global counterparts in willingly sharing information by individuals. So how do you, Gary, suggest some sensible steps that a person can take when he flies in from place A to place B to say, okay, listen, I'll give you this data of mine, but I don't need to give you this data?
Sure, I think this is very pertinent, and if I just try to break the complete hospitality sector in two major categories. One is the organized sector, or the rooms which are branded room as we call them. Thankfully, they have very good practices of ensuring the data remains protected, and they care for their brand, so they address those issues very well. Now look at the issue of these new bread and breakfast, you call them different brand names. I can own a small 2-room apartment and one room becomes a hospitality sector segment out of it. Now we must ensure that these chains which don't own the property but ensure the aggregator booking being done also needs to have benchmark before they give out any kind of brand names to them. They must ensure minimum checks for data security, for fire safety, for any kind of safety security measures are implemented by those single rooms, 10 rooms and other smaller properties that are coming up.
I mean, that's very crisp, Gary, and thank you very much, because we need to go in for a break. And I think the important thing to understand is that while physical security and data security remains a very big challenge for the hospitality industry, equally big is the challenge on how do you continue to provide a climate of stability to investors so that the industry can continue to grow. But that after a break. Welcome back. We continue to have our two experts with us, and we're looking at the hospitality industry and the challenges to it, particularly at a time when it is poised for great growth, and hopefully over the next 5 or 10 years, it will probably grow in multiple folds. But at the same time, there are also security challenges, particularly in the light of more and more of us becoming dependent on Wi-Fi related activities and internet. Anshuman, one of the big challenges for the hospitality sector is to provide a friendly environment to potential users, but at the same time to ensure that its four walls are secure in a way that you are not obtrusive into the physical security that you need to do, but at the same time you are making a user go back to a loyalty to your brand again and again because you provide all the key things. So how would you, in bullet points, just tell us what are the key issues that you in the hospitality sector would recommend to anybody to keep in mind to appear to be the best choice of hotels?
So a couple of things which comes in my mind in the first go. Firstly, the physical appearance of the hotel has to make the person feel secure about it. So when he enters, he should feel that he is in a comfortable zone. Basic security should be taken care of, including the luggage checks and all that. The data security of the person whosoever is traveling should be kept as mandate, okay, because of the certain threats that the country is going through. Thirdly, even usage of Wi-Fi and all the other services which the hotel provides needs to be kept in such a way that any information that goes from the person should be kept as a secret and should not be leaked. This in particular, when we look at the zones side, Delhi, Bombay, Bangalore, Hyderabad would be still doing a lot. But when we go to smaller cities, and especially people who are traveling for pilgrimage or for religious reasons, they are the ones who can be targeted for as a threat to the security.
Okay, Gary, again, an intelligence and data related question. I'm told that artificial intelligence is likely to become a key factor for helping companies to gain competitive advantage. But there is another linked factor to it, and that is artificial intelligence reportedly, though increasing productivity, there is a caveat to it that it would lead to greater automation and therefore impact the job market, which is a big challenge facing India today. So how do you do the balancing act?
So very correct. As of now, I think when it comes to security, there is no balancing act but to ensure there is security. Because moment you go dip down from the minimum essential benchmarks of security, you just don't have business. because the travelers may not come in. Well, I can very safely say the Indian hotels, with all the arrangements done collectively by hotels themselves, by government, police, intelligence, and everything together, are one of the most safest in the world. I'm saying it, maybe we learned it hard way after 26/11, but we still will ensure nothing like what we have seen in some of the other hotels, even in US and some of the developed economies doesn't take place. Now the balance for artificial intelligence comes up. They help in better identification of the threat. Moment you have a better identification of a threat,
Right.
you can always play the human role, ascertain whether the threat is real or how much of the value threat holds, and then accordingly neutralize. So artificial intelligence, thankfully, some of the hotels in India are mixing it very beautifully, the human intelligence and the artificial intelligence, and actually are using these principles which are talked in theory books in a lot of other parts of the world as real practical exposure in India. So I will say it's already in use, is likely to be further in use without any threat to the human job market, rather ensuring the threat to the human lives goes down.
Okay, brilliant. Anshuman, there is a positive side of a contribution that the hotel industry can make and has been making in terms of national interest. That is the role they play in terms of disasters, both in terms of hotels outside of big cities and in big cities. During disasters, there have been instances where Mumbai faced a huge waterlogging and floods, and hotels played a very positive role in helping out people who were not even guests in hotels, but they did it. You go to other earthquake and natural disaster prone areas where again the hotels provide some kind of shelter and food in situations like that. What do you feel the government needs to do is to strengthen the ability of the hotels and give them more of muscle to respond to natural disaster and relief management as a payback to the Indian system through which they gain so much because they grow and they do business?
Okay, I think the other word for hospitality is, being a hospitable. And I think this is inculcated in the people who work in the industry. So anybody who works in the hotels or restaurants for that matter are gauged or are in sync that they have to be extremely polite, hospitable to the guests. And this happens even in the areas when they are not at work. Even so, in the episodes of natural calamity or anything which is unexpected, like what happened in Mumbai or during the Taj episode or the waterlogging in Mumbai, people went out of the way, especially the hospitality staff, went out of the way to help people because that's in their DNA, and went out of the way to help them. I think where the government can really help us is like we have a small training of fire safety or in the hotels. We should also have some kind of training which will help us specifically at the time of these natural disaster or at the time when it is required to go out of the way and out of the four walls of the hotel and out of the job descriptions to go and help the people.
I think that will also help the branding of the hotels, because I was just reading that companies like IHG have a very powerful potential role that they are building for their hotels, in which they say that in disaster situations they operate shelter in a storm kind of a model. And I think more and more hotels could pick up that as a business model and offer that we are not just there to make money out of the market, but we are willing to stand in for a national effort whenever a situation so desires. But Gary, over to you, which will probably be our last question, and that is, I'm sort of still quite concerned about digital security. At the same time, also the fact about physical security. How do you, balance the two? Because there is physical security which is very obvious, and there is digital security which we take for granted, but we don't know how good they are. And also the fact is that there is a lot of big data that is being used by the hospitality sector, but there are questions about how it invades the space of people's privacy. So how do you balance the data between privacy, digital and physical security?
Sure, that's great. You know, I was part of the first privacy conference ever held in India, and I still remember, though we had some of the judges and the top professionals in the room, but nobody could understand what privacy is. So we as a nation are still struggling to find where do we draw the line that this is private and this is not. But at the same time, like I said earlier, the hotels have to look at the international benchmarks, then start looking at the Indian regulation. So hotels do not have a choice. Whatever is privacy in Germany, in USA, in England, because you're getting your investment from countries like these and Japan and all the places, that's your privacy norm. Follow that as minimal, and without any choice of saying, okay, let me deviate that. When it comes to physical security, I can say yes, we have done a lot. We are standing at a very superior position vis-a-vis some of the other countries in ensuring these hotels are physically protected. Data security, yes, that is one portion where we are lagging. And at the same time, we also should learn that how to make the guest comfortable enough that these things are taken care of. So maybe some of the aspects when they make a guest sign the registration form, a statement there that we keep your data secured, and we also request you not to share with staff unnecessarily or any other guests unnecessarily. So they need to have more communication with the guest of ensuring what they're doing is being well understood by them. All these three things mixed together, and maybe I will say a little bit of more of the overall effort by the government of India and the state governments together to ensure these regulations also start flying in, and there are better channels and mechanisms to get complaints of these hotels and the residents and employees addressed better, which should ensure the hospitality sector becomes a great catalyst in ensuring the growth is super fast.
Just a quickie, and that is, how many hotels do you think, hand on heart, a percentage of the Indian market, actually get regular risk assessments done about how prone they are to risk and what they have in place to counter those risks?
So if I really look at the organized sector, even within the organized sector, not more than 60 to 65% of hotels actually know what the risks are. So there might be a formality of risk assessment completed, but they don't exactly know what the risks are because they don't do a thorough exercise rather than a check sheet. And if I look towards the unorganized sector, I'm putting them separately because over there, there'll be less than 1% which actually touch it. So that's quite a concern. Unless you know what's wrong, how will you correct it?
Well, that is a big concern, and on that serious note, and we need to end the program purely saying that you still need to keep your fingers crossed that you are in those 60% hotels which have done a risk assessment as against the 30% which need to do that. And I think more and more people in the industry must wake up to ensuring that their business clientele, their users are 100% protected if this industry is going to go to the growth path that is projected by global assessment agencies. Thank you very much, gentlemen, for being with us on the show. We'll be back next week with another episode. Until then, goodbye.